In a culture that treats visibility like oxygen, you're told to broadcast everything: your goals, your grind, your wins. Post the plan, post the progress, post the victory lap. The story modern life sells is simple: exposure equals power. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What looks like power is often just performance in disguise. The louder you get, the more predictable you become. And once you're predictable, you're manageable. Niccolò Machiavelli, constantly reduced to a cartoon villain, wasn't simply teaching ruthlessness. He was studying survival. He watched men rise and fall in Renaissance Florence, an environment where a single boast could mark you for elimination. Power there wasn't a medal you pinned to your chest. It was a blade you kept hidden until the moment it mattered. Time and again, the men who advertised their strength first were the ones carried out last. We haven't evolved past that dynamic. We've just put it on Wi-Fi. We spill our ambitions on social media before we've taken step one. We explain our strategy so thoroughly that our rivals don't need to guess. They just need to copy. We call it authenticity. Machiavelli would call it strategic suicide. He warned, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." That's not a pretty quote to post under a selfie. It's a caution sign. The more you reveal, the more you invite definition, opposition, and attack. In the court of power, mystery isn't a flaw. It's armor. Look around your life and you'll see it. The coworker who dominates every meeting doesn't actually gain respect. They drain it. The entrepreneur who trumpets a product before it exists teaches competitors exactly where to aim. Meanwhile, the quiet operator, the one who listens more than they speak and moves when the room isn't looking, gradually shifts the center of gravity. People start adjusting to them without even noticing. They aren't loud. They're undeniable. Why does this work? Because speech is commitment. Every sentence is a stake in the ground, a position you now have to defend. Commit too early, and you box yourself in. Show off too soon, and you show your weapons to anyone willing to study them. The moment you've explained yourself, others can prepare countermeasures. Machiavelli understood that strength often lies in being underestimated. Think of the fox. It survives by staying unannounced. Think of the lion. It doesn't roar all day. It carries the threat of force, not the noise of it. Modern culture confuses presence with posting, leadership with loudness, power with performance. But the more you show, the more you owe. Visibility creates a kind of debt. Now you have to keep feeding the audience. Miss a beat, and the same crowd that cheered will keep score. Silence is different. Silence creates freedom of movement. It lets you pivot without apology. It lets you upgrade without announcing a patch note. It lets you be judged on impact, not on promises. This isn't just political theory. It's psychology. People don't fear what they fully understand. They feel safe with it, even if it's big and shiny. What makes people pause is the unknown. When your actions are constantly on display, you become explainable. Once you're explainable, you're controllable. But when you're calm and unreadable, when you keep your intentions close and your reactions measured, others start guessing. And the guessing reveals more about them than it does about you. Machiavelli wasn't telling you to hide because you're scared. He was telling you to reveal selectively because you're strategic. He knew your past statements turn into chains. Public declarations harden into expectations, and once the world expects you to be one thing, any evolution looks like betrayal. That's why silence is freedom. It's your right to adapt without drafting a press release. It's the space you need to change speed or direction without asking permission from people who are never going to help you anyway. Picture two warriors entering an arena. One announces the win before the fight, flexing for the crowd. The other steps in quietly, eyes locked, breathing steady, blade sheathed until the bell. Which one makes your stomach tighten? We don't fear the loud, we fear the unmeasured. The man who needs to be admired is already negotiating with the audience. The man who doesn't need applause is negotiating with the outcome. When you flaunt your money, your body, your relationship, your plan, it feels powerful in the moment, but you're placing bullseyes on all of it. You're training yourself to need the feedback loop. Now you're hooked on reactions, and reactions can be manipulated. Machiavelli's line, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking," isn't an instruction to be a tyrant. It's a reminder that distance and mystery protect your leverage. If your self-worth is built on being seen, you'll sell your strategy to buy the next round of applause. So what's the alternative? Become unreadable, move in silence, execute first, narrate later, if ever. Speak only when your words add weight. Let results do the talking. This isn't cowardice. It's control of your narrative, of your opponent's understanding, of the tempo of the game. Don't reveal more than serves your end. Influence isn't about being seen. It's about being felt. Quietly, powerfully, in ways that can't be reverse-engineered from your last post. Before you rush to share your next move, ask a hard question. Who benefits from this reveal, you, or the people who now get to prepare against you? The strongest forces on Earth, gravity, time, pressure, don't announce themselves. They act. Be like that. Be still. Be sharp. Be silent. When your silence weighs more than someone else's speech, you've already shifted the field. Machiavelli wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." What does that mean for you? It means every declaration you make today becomes a chain tomorrow. Your statements, your promises, your proud little posts, they trap you in the version of yourself you declared. When you change, when you pivot, when you adapt, it looks like weakness, not growth. That's why silence is freedom. Silence lets you evolve without permission. It lets you break from your old skin without explaining why you outgrew it. The men who master power master restraint. They don't show off their victories, they multiply them. They don't announce their plans, they execute them. They don't ask the world to validate their moves. They let their moves validate themselves. Imagine two warriors. One strides into the arena, boasting of his coming victory. The crowd cheers. He raises his sword with confidence. The other enters quietly. He says nothing. He doesn't posture, doesn't explain, doesn't brag. He just locks eyes with his opponent. Which one unsettles you more? Which one feels truly dangerous? Always the silent one, because the loud man makes himself predictable. The silent man leaves you guessing. That's the law of power. What's loud is limited. What's quiet is boundless. When you flaunt your wealth, your body, your relationships, your plans, you believe you're inspiring awe. In reality, you're creating targets, envy, sabotage, resistance. Worse, you're becoming addicted to approval. And the moment you need admiration, you've given up your leverage. Because whoever controls your applause controls you. Machiavelli reminded us, it is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. And fear doesn't come from endless display. It comes from distance, from the unknown, from mystique. The man who is loved for what he shows is at the mercy of what he must keep showing. The man who is feared for what he withholds becomes untouchable. Here's the trap of showing off. It changes you. You think you're in control, but you become an entertainer. You start dressing for reaction instead of purpose. You start speaking for applause instead of precision. You start living for optics instead of outcomes. And the more you crave the audience, the more they own you. The showman becomes a slave to his spectators. His need to impress is his leash. Meanwhile, the Machiavellian operator says little and reveals less. He doesn't need to explain himself. He doesn't argue. He doesn't rise to bait. Because he's not playing for the crowd. He's playing for position. Think of the most influential figures you've ever encountered. Were they the ones yelling in every room, explaining every detail? Or were they the ones whose silence carried more weight than another man's speech? Influence lives in restraint. Respect is born in scarcity. This is why kings once sat behind veils, why emperors appeared only in rare ceremonies. Not because they feared their people, but because they understood perception. Too much familiarity kills mystique. When you're seen too often, you become ordinary. When you're accessible, you become forgettable. Mystery magnifies. Visibility reduces. That's why modern life is so poisonous to power. We overshare. We live stream our struggles. We document every meal, every win, every loss. We confuse transparency with strength. But the more you reveal, the more predictable you become. And once you're predictable, you're no longer powerful, you're manageable. Machiavelli warned, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." People don't care about the truth of your work. They care about what they see. And if you show too much the mess, the doubt, the sweat, you weaken the finished result. The magician who explains the trick destroys the magic. Your job is not to explain, it's to execute. Every boast, every overshare, every justification dilutes the impact of your work. The disciplined man doesn't announce his wins. He multiplies them in silence. He lets others speculate, wonder, even fear what he's building. And in that wondering, respect grows. Because respect is not about what they know, it's about what they cannot quite grasp. The alternative to showing off is not invisibility, it's strategy. It's stepping into the light only when it serves your position, never because you're hungry for attention. The lion doesn't roar all day. He roars when it matters. The silence makes the sound terrifying. The same principle applies to you. The less you reveal, the more your rare words and moves strike like thunder. So stop confusing noise with dominance. Stop mistaking applause for respect. The world rewards those who create mystique, not those who sell themselves for likes. Your presence should weigh more than your words. Your silence should say more than your speech. When your restraint unsettles the room, when your absence speaks louder than another man's shouting, you've entered Machiavelli's domain. You've crossed into true power. Machiavelli saw it centuries ago, the downfall of princes, the betrayals of allies, the collapse of rulers who revealed too much. Their weakness wasn't their ambition, it was their visibility. They mistook attention for strength. They thought performance was persuasion. But those who endured weren't the loudest. They were the most unreadable. If you want to last, you must kill the illusion that being understood is always valuable. It's not. In fact, once people fully understand you, they stop fearing you. They start calculating how to surpass you. They start preparing counters to every move you might make. To remain in control, you must remain partially hidden. You must be hard to define. You must be a question mark in their minds. That's why Caesar crossed the Rubicon in silence. Why Cesare Borgia revealed nothing until his enemies were trapped. Why Machiavelli himself wrote in allegories instead of plain instructions. They understood that concealment is a weapon, not just in politics, but in psychology. Once people know your intent, they can prepare against it. Once they know your limits, they can push past them. But when they can't read you, they hesitate. And hesitation is power. This is the principle most men break every day. They leak their weaknesses on social media for sympathy. They post every small win for validation. They explain their every decision, thinking honesty builds connection. But what it really builds is vulnerability. You are giving others the playbook to dismantle you. Every confession, every reveal, every overshare, it's ammunition for someone else. Machiavelli would tell you to build fortresses of the mind. Hide your process. Protect your ambitions. Let people see the results only when they can no longer be stopped. That's why generals don't announce battle plans. That's why architects don't show unfinished blueprints. Exposure invites interference. Concealment creates anticipation. Most men can't handle this discipline. They feel the tension and rush to release it. They feel doubt and rush to explain it. They feel triumph and rush to announce it. But the dangerous man resists. He holds his silence. He lets others stew in uncertainty. He makes them talk more, reveal more, project more. Meanwhile, he says nothing, reveals nothing, commits to nothing. That silence isn't passivity, it's pressure. It makes others overextend themselves. They give away their position while trying to decode yours. They bleed information while you conserve energy. And in conserving, you grow stronger. This is the difference between being quiet and being unreadable. Quiet can be weakness, but unreadable is strength. It's active. It's deliberate. It's the art of giving away just enough to confuse, but never enough to be cornered. You leave gaps for people to fill in with their own fears and fantasies. They'll always imagine something larger, darker, and more powerful than what's real. And imagination magnifies more than reality ever could. Look at Churchill. He didn't speak constantly, but when he did, his words landed like bombs. Look at Marcus Aurelius. He wrote privately, not for applause, and built his strength inward. Even modern leaders who truly command respect, notice how they listen more than they talk. They don't perform, they position. This is what Machiavelli understood with brutal clarity. Charisma fades, applause dies, fame is fragile, but a strong, concealed mind controlled, unreadable, deliberate, that is unbreakable. That is the kind of presence people cannot prepare for, cannot resist, and cannot undermine. So the question becomes, do you want to be liked for being open, or respected for being unknowable? Do you want quick applause or long-term leverage? Do you want to shine briefly or endure silently? Because here's the paradox. The man who is constantly visible becomes common, but the man who withholds becomes rare, and rarity is value. Scarcity creates demand. Silence creates mystique, and mystique is the shadow that makes real power possible. Your goal is not to be invisible, it's to be deliberate. To choose when to appear and when to vanish. To let them think they understand you, then move in a way they never predicted. To let them see the checkers board while you're playing chess. To smile while holding a blade. To listen while you calculate. To speak only when your silence has done its work. This is presence without performance. This is power without noise. This is Machiavelli's quiet strategy. Terrifying not because of what is shown, but because of what is withheld. Power, like gold, loses value when it's too common. The man who floods the room with himself, who posts every thought, who explains every move, who demands constant recognition, cheapens his own worth. He becomes background noise. He is no longer revered. He is ordinary. And ordinary men are disposable. Machiavelli warned rulers never to be too accessible, not because isolation makes you special, but because scarcity magnifies value. Your presence must feel like an event, not a default setting. Every word you drop should feel like a stone thrown into still water, rare, deliberate, impossible to ignore. This is why mystique is your greatest weapon. Not mystique built on hiding and fear, but mystique built on restraint. It's not about never being seen. It's about being seen rarely, with purpose. The actor who explains every trick loses the audience. The one who lets silence hang, who reveals only what serves the performance, becomes unforgettable. The same applies to you. In negotiation, in leadership, in relationships, the one who reveals least holds the most leverage. The first to speak loses ground. The one who justifies himself lowers his value. The one who speaks less than expected forces the room to adjust. Silence is tension, and tension is power. Most people hate silence. They rush to fill it. They confess, overshare, explain themselves into weakness. But the Machiavellian strategist lets silence stretch until others unravel in it. Their discomfort exposes them. Their chatter betrays them. Their attempts to decode you only make them more transparent. This is why Machiavelli's lessons are psychological blueprints, not just political ones. He studied fear, hesitation, and the way uncertainty controls behavior. He knew that people don't need to be dominated. They just need to be kept off balance. When they don't know what you'll do next, they tread lightly. When they're unsure how you think, they respect the distance. When they sense something powerful behind your calm silence, they defer. The loud man can be measured. The quiet man cannot. The predictable man can be managed. The unreadable man cannot. This is why showing off destroys you. It places you on a schedule you don't control. You start moving for applause, not for advantage. You act when others are watching, not when it's strategically right. You confuse reaction with result, and in that performance, your real power leaks away. Think of how many plans have died, not because of opposition, but because they were revealed too soon. A goal announced before it's ready. A strategy leaked for validation. An idea posted for likes. Machiavelli would call this premature commitment a death sentence. Once exposed, others prepare against it. Once declared, you are chained to it, and once predictable, you are beatable. True confidence doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need acknowledgement. It moves with precision, and in silence, it creates respect. Because the fewer words you use, the heavier they land. The fewer moves you show, the harder they are to anticipate. That's the paradox of leadership. The loud leader, who explains and justifies everything, may seem accessible, but rarely inspires respect. The quiet leader, who listens more than he speaks, commands authority without needing to demand it. His silence raises the price of his words. His restraint multiplies the weight of his presence. So learn this. Silence is not absence. It is leverage. Every time you withhold, you raise your value. Every time you delay a reaction, you increase your options. Every time you resist the urge to show off, you preserve your power. And when you finally do step forward, when you finally speak, the world listens. Not because you're loud, but because you were quiet. Not because you demanded attention, but because your silence made people crave it. That is the architecture of mystique. That is how you build a reputation that commands respect without needing applause. Here's the final lesson. Showing off is not just arrogance, it's surrender. Every time you reveal too much, you hand the world the tools to dismantle you. Every post, every boast, every overshare, it tells your rivals where to aim. It shows them your weak points. It makes you predictable. And once you're predictable, you're no longer powerful. You're manageable. Machiavelli understood this intimately. He knew that power is never about what people see, it's about what they can't see. The strongest men in history weren't the ones constantly performing. They were the ones who moved like shadows. They spoke less. They listened more. They let others underestimate them until it was far too late. The world today rewards noise, but noise is not power. It's often the mask for the absence of power. True power is quiet. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need recognition. It only needs results. So the next time you feel the urge to broadcast your plans, to flaunt your progress, to prove your worth, ask yourself, who benefits? You or the ones now preparing to use it against you? The Machiavellian mind never gives away the map. It never shows the blade before the strike. It lets others speak, boast, and expose themselves, while it remains unreadable. Understand this. Legacy is not created by noise. It's created by motion. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable motion. The kings of history weren't crowned by applause. They were crowned by their ability to rule without needing to be seen. They let their decisions echo louder than any words. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to be praised. You don't need to be liked. You need to be effective. And effectiveness begins where the need for attention ends. Walk away from the spotlight. Withdraw the urge to prove. Speak less. Withhold more. Move only when the move serves you, not when it serves the crowd. Because when your silence is louder than their noise, you've already won. When your results speak in rooms you've never entered, you've already won. When people realize they've been playing your game without even knowing the rules, you've already won. That's the quiet victory. That's the power Machiavelli tried to reveal before the world drowned it out in noise. He wrote for the strategist, not the performer. For the ruler, not the showman. For the man who understands that mystique is not weakness, it's dominance. So now I'll ask you, are you ready to walk the silent path? Are you willing to be doubted, misunderstood, even resented because you chose strategy over spectacle? If you are, then write this in the comments. I move in silence. Let the world see how many of you are done performing, how many of you are ready to stop showing off and start winning. And if this message hit you, don't stop here. Watch the next video. It's not entertainment. It's preparation for a world that doesn't reward the loud, but the lethal.